While this is taking place, Brittney Griner comes out and says, I am so sick and tired of the NBA, WNBA. It used to be a peaceful, small little thing. Now there's crowds screaming, hollering. This is disruptive. It's not allowing us to play the game. This is her quote. I don't know if you saw this or not when she gave that.
That Patrick David just gave the worst reality check in the history of podcasts. Everyone was talking after Brittney Griner made some outrageous remarks about Caitlin Clark with racist overtones.
From 41. What the hell is going on with WNBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger?
However, Griner's protests about fan noise were totally disregarded by PBD, who brought up her time spent in a Russian prison. Which was more rewarding, seeing Griner explain why she should be thankful for any exposure the WNBA receives or reminding him about the Russian prison. The counterattack was ruthless.
I'd have fun with you. Brittney Griner, where she says, right there, watch this. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there watching on.
When Brittney Griner was out there complaining about crowd noise and making subtle racial remarks about Caitlin Clark, PBD was busy reminding her of some uncomfortable facts that she apparently forgot during her time away from basketball. Let's be completely honest about what happened on Patrick Bet-David's podcast, because she just received the reality check of her life. Guria's utterly absurd remarks about how the WNBA used to be this quiet, peaceful place where you could bring your laptop and work during games kicked off the whole thing. Just think about that for a moment. A professional athlete complaining that fans are too boisterous and involved during sporting events? The audacity is astounding, but it gets much worse when you consider who is saying this.
Used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now, it's like there's large gatherings of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. You are! The whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism. But here,
she bemoaned the unfair pressure to perform as if they were there for entertainment, even though WNBA games used to be peaceful and quiet. Now, there are huge crowds of people watching from the stands, some of them shouting about what they see. Professional sports are all about providing entertainment, Brittney. However, the most upsetting aspect of her remarks was when she claimed to have seen a father and daughter shouting in the crowd. Although she couldn't hear what they were saying, she assumed it was about her performance or some mild racism. Her choice of the term light racism to characterize basketball fans cheering during a game demonstrates exactly where her thoughts are on this entire issue, because they instantly turn to racial explanations for the crowd noise. Patrick bet when responding to these remarks, David didn't mince words, and to be honest, someone had to say what he said. People were reminded by PBD that Griner was indeed in a Russian prison not too long ago. She was imprisoned abroad on grave charges and had to be freed through a prisoner swap that included the release of a notorious arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death.
Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about. Especially something like this.
The United States government freed Victor Bout, who was found guilty of conspiring to kill Americans and aiding terrorists, in exchange for Brittney Griner during the prisoner swap that brought her home.
It doesn't matter what sport you are. It doesn't matter what sport you pick. That's how fans act in every arena. In every arena. So, and then when you, clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The Merchant of Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according.
And she complains about the noise levels after being allowed to play the sport she loves again in front of eager spectators in the United States. You would assume that someone who had been imprisoned abroad would have a totally different perspective on freedom and opportunity, yet PBD's remark was cruel but entirely correct. The fact that Griner finds crowd enthusiasm upsetting rather than motivating demonstrates how disconnected she has become from reality and thankfulness. The timing of these remarks is even more absurd because they were made at a time when the WNBA is seeing an unprecedented increase in revenue and popularity. The league is projecting $1 billion in value for the first time in its 25-year history, and this growth is almost entirely attributable to Caitlin Clark's attention to women's basketball. However, this is where Griner's remarks become especially offensive because she is griping about the very thing that is generating more money for her and every other WNBA player than they have ever made before the crowds. The racial overtones in Griner's remarks are particularly troubling because they highlight the true problem that some players have with Clark's success. The noise, the enthusiasm, and all of that directly translate into more money, better television deals, and higher salaries for everyone in the league. The fact that a young white player is garnering the kind of widespread attention that black players in the NBA never get despite years of success is more important than basketball skill or individual accomplishment. Despite acknowledging that Clark's race likely plays a part in some of the attention she receives, DVD addressed this dynamic head-on by pointing out that she is truly talented enough to merit that attention. Clark finished fourth in the MVP voting during her second season in the league. She plays an exciting style that works well on television and exudes the competitive fire that casual fans want to see.
WNBA says they want to get paid more. They're saying this year they're going to make $1 billion. That's what they're saying, okay? For the first time ever. Now that Caitlin Clark is hurt for 2 weeks, did you see ticket prices? Insane. Let me read you the ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark's been hurt for 2 weeks, all right? So let's go through this. Caitlin Clark absence is having an immediate impact beyond the court. According to data shared by Yahoo Sports via TickPick, prices for 2 specific Indiana Fever away games against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics dropped sharply after Clark was sidelined. Before the injury, the lowest ticket available for Fever's matchup in Chicago was $86. For the game in Washington, fans needed at least $41 to get in. After the news of Clark's absence, those get-in prices fell to $25 from $86 and $14.
The entire tale of who is actually responsible for the WNBA's success is told by the ticket price data that PBD cited in the show. As soon as Clark was hurt, Fever games' ticket prices fell. Washington tickets dropped from $41 to $14, while Chicago tickets plummeted from $86 to $25. Those aren't minor changes. These are market crashes that occur when the primary draw is eliminated. When you take into account that the majority of WNBA games were played in essentially empty arenas for the first 24 years of the league's existence, players were at ease with that because there was no pressure, no expectations, and no accountability to paying customers, making Griner's complaints about crowd noise even more ridiculous. All of that changed when Clark arrived, and it was obvious that several players weren't prepared for the transition. The WNBA lost money for 25 years in a row because of players who treated games more like casual pickup runs than like professional entertainment that people paid to watch. Griner's description of the old WNBA as a place where you could bring your laptop and get work done perfectly captures why the league was irrelevant for so long. PBD's response was especially successful because he prevented Griner from using victim narratives or racial grievances to divert attention from the situation. She was freed from international detention and is now able to play basketball in America for more money than the WNBA has ever made. Her response was to complain about the lack of fan enthusiasm, which was particularly detrimental to Griner's case. PBD emphasized that players in the NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL all deal with hostile road situations and fervent fans. This is not an uncommon burden that calls for special accommodations, but rather a necessary part of their jobs. It appears that Griner believes WNBA athletes should have all the perks of professional sports, including compensation. The stage and exposure without the demands or pressures of entertaining paying fans. That isn't how professional sports operate in any league or nation. The Russian jail element that PBD raised was especially harsh, since it demonstrated how tone-deaf Griner is using her platform to whine about Americans being passionate about basketball games. Patrick. She is someone who has actually experienced tyranny, constraints on her freedom, and consequences for her conduct. That the Michael Jordan comparison was especially pertinent because Jordan experienced similar resentment from other players who felt he was receiving too much attention and credit. David also addressed the broader resentment that some WNBA players feel toward Clark's success. He acknowledged that it's understandable for players to feel frustrated when they see someone getting attention that they feel they deserve. But he also pointed out that this dynamic exists in every sport when transcendent talents emerge. Jordan's influence was indisputable, not because the media was exaggerating his significance, and the Detroit Pistons actually made the Jordan rules in an attempt to physically and psychologically abuse him. In addition to winning Rookie of the Year, she ranks 4th in the league in MVP voting, and her first year is simply amazing. She seems like she could pull up from anywhere, so you know she has that sort of skill. Didn't win a national championship. We lost to LSU one year and to South Carolina the next, but she's amazing and definitely deserving of being the first overall pick. As I was telling everyone, ride the wave. Rising tide lifts all boats. The girl is amazing. It's not like she's just a scrub. She's a star-caliber player who attracts attention, perhaps because of her fan base and the fact that she's a young, white woman. 1063 The circumstances with Clark are comparable, and the focus she gets is determined by her quantifiable influence.
And she wreaks havoc. She's the Rookie of the Year. She's 4th in the league in MVP voting. 4th in the league, her rookie year.
Wow.
Outstanding. She's like Steph Curry. She can pull up from anywhere. You understand? She has that kind of capability. Didn't win a national championship. Lost to LSU one year. We lost to South Carolina another year. But she's outstanding and clearly worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. And what I was saying to everybody is ride the wave. Rising tide lifts all boats. The girl is spectacular. It's not like she's not a scrub. She's not only can play, she's a star caliber player who draws this attention. And maybe it's because that fan base that she has and her being a young white lady.
Television ratings and ticket sales. Sales of merchandise and social media interaction. These are objective financial indicators that demonstrate her worth to the league, not arbitrary views or media narratives. Guria's complaints regarding racial overtones and crowd reactions are especially troubling because they presume the worst from basketball fans who are just passionate about the sport. The idea that father-daughter pairs cheering at games must be practicing racism demonstrates a worldview that seeks out issues rather than seizing opportunities. The podcast conversation exposed how unprepared some WNBA players were for mainstream success. For 25 years, they lived in a bubble with no criticism, little expectations, and almost no accountability. When Clark arrived, there was intense scrutiny, actual performance pressure, and repercussions because it emphasized the sharp contrast between Guria's time in a Russian jail and her current grievances against American basketball fans. PBD's remark about appreciation was particularly potent. Every moment of freedom, every chance to compete, and every fan who chooses to pay to watch her play should be celebrated by someone who genuinely understood what she went through. The WNBA's financial predictions rely only on sustaining the level of fan engagement that Clark has created. If players like Griner are successful in alienating casual fans with claims of racism and complaints about enthusiasm, the league will soon return to its prior business model, which involved empty arenas and losses. Guria's remarks were especially regrettable because they were made at a time when the WNBA was seeing its greatest financial results in league history. Rather than seizing the chance and building on the momentum, she chose to concentrate on alleged issues rather than clear advantages. Patrick Bet. David had the ideal viewpoint to handle these problems because of his experience in business. He is aware that income, which covers player salaries, is fueled by fan interaction and customer happiness. A basic ignorance of how professional sports economics operate is revealed by complaining about customers being overly excited, which is similar to whining about having too much money. The parallel to other entertainment sectors was especially pertinent. At performances, performers don't gripe about the loudness of the audience. Performers don't gripe about excessively involved crowds during shows. Creating excitement and emotional investment from paying clients is the main goal of professional entertainment. According to Griner, WNBA players ought to enjoy all the advantages of greater fame without having to deal with the pressure or scrutiny that comes with widespread attention, which is unrealistic in any professional sport or entertainment sector. Guria's discussion of racial dynamics is especially delicate since it touches on pressing problems in American culture. Yet it is unfair to all parties concerned to use these dynamics as an excuse to avoid criticism or to rationalize away market realities. Clark's performance is determined by quantifiable results rather than racial inclinations. Because he held Griner responsible for her tone-deaf comments and acknowledged the intricacy of these issues, PBD's answer was successful. He didn't completely downplay racial issues, but he also didn't allow them to be a justification for disregarding the facts concerning league economics and fan interaction. PBD's discussion of the prisoner exchange background was very potent because it made everyone aware of the stakes in Griner's case, which were the United States.